Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal and you are watching the Mojo story. Unprecedented scenes on the roads in Russia. Soldiers are putting out a possible mutiny. This after Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin ordered his 25,000 strong militia to march towards Kremlin. There you can see on the photos. The one in the middle is the Wagner chief. Russia has meanwhile issued arrest warrant against him after his call for mutiny. Wagner mercenary chief vows to punish military top brass in Russia. Now, those are some of the pictures you can see on the screens. Uh, Soldiers on the streets, and there are armored vehicles, there are tanks out on the roads. So, situation is clearly very tense on the ground. So this is the situation on the ground. To discuss on this, we are joined by an eminent panel. We're joined by Nandan Krishnan, the distinguished fellow ORF. Welcome to the show, sir. We're also joined by Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, the defense expert. Uh, if I can start with you, Nandan Krishnan, what is the situation in Russia? This seems to be unprecedented. Soldiers on the ground, we're told that they are trying to prevent the march of these Wagner chiefs, his men, his soldiers towards Kremlin, and they have erected barricades. So this looks like a very, very grave situation unfolding in Russia.
Thank you, Zafar. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
I'll start with a couple of clarifications.
yeah,
One is the Wagner troops are nowhere anywhere near Moscow.
okay,
They are in the southern town of Rostov on Don.
yeah,
They have taken over the military headquarters of what in our parlance would be called as the Southern Command.
yeah,
Uh, they are not preventing any operations that are being undertaken by Russian troops in the war in Ukraine. So
yeah,
they are allowing all that to happen. What they are preventing is they are saying is attempts by the Russian regular army to overrun them, take over the airport, and things like that. That is point number one.
yes,
Point number two, they have also apparently in the last hour or so deployed some of their forces in city of Voronezh, again in the southern region. These
yeah,
are all areas that are close to the war in, or rather close to Ukraine.
right,
So I don't think there is any danger of anything of the sort happening in Moscow at this point of time. The second point is that this is the culmination of a long-standing feud the Wagner chief has had with the Russian defense minister, Mr. Sergei Shoigu, and the chief of staff, Mr. Gerasimov, or General Gerasimov.
yeah,
In fact, one of the demands he has right now is that these two individuals be handed over to him.
right,
The situation currently appears to be somewhat under control because uh, the uh, one of the senior most generals of the Russian army, the head of intelligence, General Alexeyev, and a deputy defense minister are at this point of time in Rostov. They are inside the military headquarters and they are talking to Mr. Prigozhin, basically with the aim of hoping to get him to stand down and resolve this situation peacefully. So that is the situation on the ground, as it were.
right, right,
Uh, the Russians, of course, would like to avoid, that is, I'm talking of the Russian leadership, would like
yeah,
to avoid any kind of open confrontation on the streets, in which you see people exchanging fires, tanks
yeah,
firing. Of course, that would be the last thing they want. But let's
yeah,
be very clear that the Russian leadership, in its current state of mind, will not shy away from that situation if
right,
required. And I don't think they're going to allow this situation to fester for too long.
right.
So, Mr.
And
Prigozhin at some level seems to have burnt his bridges,
yeah.
but I think the resolution of this, one way or the other, is going to happen rather quickly.
In fact, you spoke about his, taking control of the Southern Command. He has put out a video statement. The Wagner chief, if we can play that, it has the translation in English, in which he is saying that he's at the Southern Army Command and he has taken control of it, and his soldiers are there. If we can use it before I go to Lieutenant General Rakesh.
Мы находимся в штабе, 7 часов 30 минут утра, под контролем военные объекты Ростова, в том числе аэродром. Самолеты, которые уходят для боевой работы, уходят штатно, проблем никаких нету. Санитарные борта уходят, проблем нет. Все, что делается, это мы взяли под контроль, чтобы штурмовая авиация не наносила удары по нам, а наносила по украинцам. Главный штаб управления, главный пункт управления работает в штатном режиме. Проблем никаких нет, ни один офицер не оторван. Поэтому, когда вам будут рассказывать о том, что ЧВК «Вагнер» помешало работе, и поэтому на фронте что-то посыпалось, на фронте посыпалось не поэтому. Когда мы пришли сюда, то мы еще раз подтвердили много новое. Огромное количество территорий потеряно. Солдат убитых в 3-4 раза больше, чем это в документах подается наверх. А то, что подается, это в 10 раз меньше, чем говорят по телевизору. Санитарные потери в день составляют некоторые дни до 1000 человек. Это убитые, без вести пропавшие, раненые и так называемые отказники, которые отказываются не потому, что они струсили, я уже говорил, а потому что у них выхода нету, боеприпасов нет, управления нет. Начальник генерального штаба бежал отсюда, как только узнал о том, что мы подходим к зданию.
The chief of general staff ran away after he got to know that we are here. He says that huge territories have been lost. The number of soldiers killed is much more than what is said. Do you think it will work for him, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma?
Endorse
If you
exactly
can,
what
yeah.
Professor.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you for
it's okay.
inviting me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I endorse what Professor Unikrishnan has mentioned just now. This gentleman, Roslin, is a colorful character. There are photographs of him serving wine to George Bush when George Bush visited. He was supposed to be a chef of President Putin, and is also used to sell hamburgers earlier. So, he's a fairly colorful character. Having said that, the second, first time we came to know Wagner was just about 7-8 years ago, or maybe 2014, 13, 14. When the first time Ukraine happened, there was some mention about Wagner Group in Donbass. So they have been active in Africa, many places, in Syria, and of course they have been fighting for quite some time here. Now, what he's done is that he has been cribbing about the hierarchy of Russians for quite some time. I mean, one would say last 7-8 months. First time when Soledar was lost, Soledar was captured by the Russians. He came up on saying that his troops, that's Wagner, people had captured Soledar and not the Russians. And there was a controversy between Russians and on who captured Soledar. Now, the Bakhmut battle lasted for 9 odd months, starting in November last year. And 9 odd months has been largely being fought by Wagner people. But there has been, of course, also involvement of the Russians. At one time, he said that the Russians are not supplying him ammunition and not giving him rations and logistics. So he's fighting a battle in Bakhmut with his hands tied behind his back. And he has been cribbing against Gerasimov. But then he has been cribbing against Gerasimov's predecessor also earlier. There were 4 or 5 generals which have changed over in Ukraine for quite some time by the Russians. Gerasimov was the chief of general staff, was brought in a couple of months ago. And Gerasimov is a known gentleman. We all have been reading about his writings for 7-8 years. Yeah. Having said that, now he's moved to Southern Military District. As rightly pointed out, it's like a command headquarters. That's a straight road coming from Donbass, because he's located in Donbass. He is not in the Crimean side. Now he's moved down the M4, down the Donbass region across to Rostov on Don. Don is a river. So he has moved there. He's taken off a couple of small towns which come up between Donbass and coming down south towards Rostov, and he's probably taken over the headquarters. FSB should have warrant against him. There is some gentleman who is an opponent to Putin who's made a statement in his favor. But I absolutely agree that he is nowhere as saying some coup is being caused or something like that. He has grievances and he's exercised his grievances. Now he says in last 2 days, number of missiles fired by the Russians in against Ukraine were actually deliberately fired against his people, Wagner troops located in Donbass, which caused a large number of casualties. And this says has been deliberately done to cause casualties to Wagner people because the Russian armed forces people do not like Wagner. Or there is that internecine issue out here. What is the truth? God alone knows. His statement now saying thousands have died and more territory has been lost. Truth is the first casualty in war. And what's happening out there, how much of the counteroffensive successful, how much not successful, that you can't say. I'll end by saying that suffice it to say that he will be located in a small area of Rostov-on-Don, and finally Putin will have his way. That's the way it happens across in such countries.
Right, and truth is the first casualty whenever there is a war. The point here is that if we're getting updates, Putin has given a live address. He said it's a stab in the back of our country. He goes on to say that at night I spoke with the commanders of all directions. The troops are fighting heroically. I call for unity, consolidation, and responsibility. He also says that I promise imminent punishment to those who deliberately took the path of betrayal and prepared an armed rebellion. But clearly, it's a headache for Putin. Uh, on one hand, he's at war with Ukraine, and on the other hand, now this issue suddenly crops up. Anandanuni Krishnan?
Zafar, I think at one level, I think you're exaggerating the significance, not of the event. It is a significant event, but the dimension of the challenge in technical terms that this mutiny represents. I think, in technical terms, the Russian army will deal with this effectively. What they're looking for is to try and do this in a manner that does not require an all out assault of the headquarters. After all, they
Right.
have to continue fighting a war and they have their people stationed there.
Yeah,
Wagner's advantage at this point is that a large number of officers are
yeah,
actually in the location that they are controlling. So you have that situation. The
right.
second thing is that I think I don't know what triggered the Wagner chief to go over the edge and
Yeah,
get into this kind of a confrontation. But judging by whatever reports that one hears about the situation in the war, and there I cannot but agree with General Sharma that in the fog of war, the first casualty is truth. Uh, it does not appear that some of the statements he's made are anything that is resembling the truth, because even the Americans, through their satellite imagery and all, are not suggesting that the Russians have lost control of a large part of the territory they were controlling in Ukraine till now, right? They are suggesting that some incremental advantages have been gained by the Ukrainians, but not significant in terms of the counteroffensive. And thousands of people dying in a country like Russia, where, by the way, right now, if you go to Russian channels, there's live coverage of all this. So
yes, yes,
it would be very, very difficult for anyone to stop showing thousands of bodies coming back from
yeah,
Ukraine in flights or trains or whatever.
yeah,
So I suspect that too is a prevarication of the truth and an exaggeration for some
right,
other purpose. So
right,
overall, I think Mr. Prigozhin has overplayed his hand.
yeah,
Uh, if the Russians are able to negotiate with him and try and resolve this in a manner which does not require the usage of arms, he himself is unlikely to sort of somehow he will be tried, but the rest of his troops will undoubtedly be spared and will probably continue operating as they are under new leadership.
Right. Lieutenant Rakesh Sharma, how would Ukraine be viewing the situation? Can they take advantage of the situation, the internal disturbance, even if it is small or it's contained, that's taking place in Russia?
If you follow what operations that they have carried out from 4th of June onwards, the so-called counter-offensive, it came up in four major places, and in
Yeah.
four major places, their total success. And I'm talking about the Western media, which has been saying so, which is the ISW and other sites which cover the whole thing. The total gains were minuscule. In fact, Russians had made major gains of destroying in one of the operations being carried out by the Ukrainians. 15 of these latest Leopard tanks, which were provided by the Germans, have been destroyed by Russian fire. Now, the fact of the matter is that this is being brought about by the Western media. So, the counter-offensive, so-called counter-offensive, has come against a strong wall of defenses and a series of defenses. And then there are, of course, waterways in between. So that offensive is not over 1,200 kilometers. It is narrowed down. So, firstly, saying that what counter-offensive has come up, the counter-offensive of 8-9 brigades is not much of a counter-offensive. I think Russians have the prepared for this kind of things to come across there. So,
Yeah.
Ukraine taking advantage actually on this matter, along on the territorial front and the war, I don't think so. On media, on psychological warfare, on narrative building, of course, the Western media will go berserk. Now they'll raise whole lot of issues and whole lot of news will start coming up to build up some kind of pressure against the Russians. But on ground, I don't think it will make much difference.
Right. Nandan Krishnan, Putin has spoken. How does it impact Putin when he contains this situation and the situation is resolved? Do you think that he will emerge as a stronger leader or a weaker leader, given that there are mixed voice coming from the country as far as war with Ukraine is concerned?
Putin right now undoubtedly is very popular. This event uh, will dent some of the belief that he is in total control,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, early on at least, Prigozhin obviously was able to communicate, if not directly with Putin, at least through intermediaries, he was able to communicate. But in the last, what is evident is in the last couple of months, he's been unable to do so. Uh, I would think that to a large extent, the degree of how much this affects Putin will depend on how this situation is resolved. If
Yes.
it's an armed conflict on the streets,
Yeah. Yeah.
there is heavy assault involved, obviously it will impact negatively, because it'll, as General Sharma pointed out, it'll have a huge psychological impact,
Yeah.
not just on those involved in the operation, but on the population as a whole. Because this is almost,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not at that level, but it's a fighting between
Yeah.
fellow
Yeah.
countrymen. It's virtually a civil war, even though it's a mutiny.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is going to affect Putin's control in the country. He is going to remain in power, and over a period of time, I think this will also come to pass, as it were.
Right. And lastly, Lieutenant Rakesh Sharma, 25,000 troops who were directed towards Ukraine have now made a U-turn. Do you think it makes an impact in the overall military context as far as war is concerned?
So, what are these 25,000 troops that he's got? He has people in Africa, in Syria, and so many countries across there. These were actually, in some news information that used to come in, were people provided by from jails and criminals and all riffraff that came across, who were quickly trained and formed into some kind of mercenary outfit. So, and there, of course, they were given some kind of guarantees or things like that, that you go fight there, so we'll give you some advantage from the jail terms you are going across, the criminal elements, etc. And they are not Wagner is not the only private security companies fighting there. There were Chechens fighting there. On the Ukrainian side, there are private military companies fighting also. So, this is a game, this is a muddle out there inside. How much? 25,000? 25,000 people were not located in one area. They must have been split into many areas. Russia has a problem of manpower. So has Ukraine, a serious problem of manpower recently. And that's why they are saying they'll mobilize the entire nation. Every able-bodied man will come across. I don't think that it is earth-shaking in the conduct of war as far as Ukraine and Russia is concerned on the ground. It may have effect on President Putin because of the nation will feel it. Of course, last surveys being done across in Russia showed President Putin's popularity has retained at a very high level. Despite the war on, despite whatever happened in war, President Putin has retained some kind of, people are still fond of him. So having said that, this will make a difference somewhat. Yeah.
Time we have on the show. Thanks so much, Lieutenant Rakesh Sharma and Nandan Krishnan for joining us on the show and for speaking this subject. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
We started Mojo right here in this basement. Just 4 people, 4. And now we're about to hit our first 1 million subscribers. So this is to say thank you to all of you for your support, for your respect, and for your encouragement. We've always gone to where the story is. During the pandemic, when television's big anchors were hunkered down in their studios or at their homes, we hit the road. We traveled from Delhi to Kerala, covering 30,000 kilometers in a small car, reporting from inside ICUs and inside slum tenements. Whether it's flash floods or war zones, we've always put our boots on the ground. In fact, we're just back from Punjab, tailing the Khalistani fugitive Amritpal Singh. And through all of this, we have always put you, the people, first. In an age of partisan polarized media where most journalists are either chamcha ya morcha, we believe the story is sacred and the truth of the story is what matters. And now as we get ready for the next step, we need your help. Become a Mojo member and get first access to all our big interviews. Get a chance to ask our newsmakers questions. Get a chance to write and report for us for both our website and our channels. And also, interact with me and my colleagues directly through AMA sessions. Literally, ask me anything. Click on the join now right next to the subscribe button, and yes, also subscribe if you haven't yet, and become a Mojo member for just 159 rupees a month. Hope to see lots of you in our community.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.